Welcome to Manager Tools. Today's cast, Communicating in Advance of a Miss, Part 2. The questions this cast answers are, how can I help my team meet deadlines? How should I communicate with my team about their tasks and deliverables? And how should I address missed deadlines? If you want answers to these questions and more, keep listening.
Hey folks, our client virtual training options allow you to train your team on the Effective Manager Conference, which for clients is one-on-ones, feedback, delegation, and the details of rolling out the Trinity in only 6.5 hours over 3 sessions. Imagine getting your team trained in less than 1 business day with a maximum of only 2.5 hours of downtime for each of those sessions. And that gets you all of the material that we deliver for client on-sites, but gives you a great deal more flexibility. We're trying to make it as easy as possible for you to get your folks up to where they need to be. If you're interested, please give us a call or just email Maggie, Maggie, at manager-tools.com. We hope to see you in a virtual session as a client team or group sometime soon.
That takes us then to the basics of deliverables, deadlines, and communication. So much of our inefficiencies at work derive from a lack of understanding about how work happens and why the various systems and communications exist around it to help us get work done. Without organizations training employees about their work culture, individuals have to make assumptions about what to do and how to do it. And because individuals' own objectives are sometimes at odds with the organization, for example, the having of a normal functioning family life versus the ability to work overtime to meet every deadline, each of us at times has to make sometimes poor choices about our work and the importance of communicating about it.
It's interesting that there is a set of organizations, which we're pretty familiar with, that do this much better than any other, which is the military.
Yeah.
The lack of standing armies and unique missions and heightened risk of armies caused them to begin a long time ago what we call basic training, where culture and norms and rules of military are taught and reinforced. Some of you may be familiar. There is no similar civilian equivalent.
No, there is not.
I was talking to somebody, actually I was telling someone I met recently, they asked, what do I do? And I was explaining, and I said, she said, that's interesting. I kind of assumed that people got that kind of training somewhere. And I said, it's kind of like how you would assume that people would graduate high school knowing how to write a check.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't. Now, maybe checks are obsolete
well, yeah,
at this point. Maybe
that's
checks
an
are,
old example.
Yes.
Y'all get it.
We're dating ourselves. And
right.
It still happens that you get, you get out of high school not knowing how to do your taxes.
Mm-hmm.
So keep in mind, there's no civilian equivalent to basic training. So our newest, youngest, freshest employees are expected to just learn on the job, which puts managers in a tight spot. But I also think it's rare that people just say that out loud. Like, hey, if you've got a bunch of fresh out of university kids on your team, you have a lot to teach them.
Yeah.
You really do. You have a lot to teach them. It's incredibly hard to do. It's also incredibly inefficient, as most of us have learned firsthand. If you've had people who you work with who are new in their careers, you're going to discover this very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Even P.S., I hate to say this, but people that are not so new in their careers, we experience the same thing when people become managers for the first time. That's why we teach the effective manager. Because people don't realize how to lead individuals. I mean, you are an exceptional engineer. I bet you'll be the exceptional manager of the engineering team.
It's like saying if you can drive a car, you can fly a plane.
Yeah. And you're like, wait a minute, this is a fundamentally different role. Oh, yes, it is. But you'll figure it out. I mean, how hard?
And listen, a lot of managers do a great job of leading by example. If you were an engineer and you had a great engineering manager, cool. The thing is, there's stuff you don't see about why those things are happening. If sometimes, even if your manager's awesome, It's one thing to lead by example. You also have to communicate enough such that your directs know why and how what you're doing, because they're not seeing everything that you're doing.
Right.
So really, it's not just our responsibility to lead by example. It's our responsibility to communicate such that our directs get this learning.
Exactly. So let's go over then just a few of the principles that inform how organizations think about work and its parameters, starting with us addressing the fact that deadlines are going to be missed. We're all humans. We're all flawed. No one that's listening to this is a robot. What that means is we have a tendency to overcommit. And then we straggle after ripe blackberries. We stayed up last night to binge watch our favorite show, and we didn't get to bed. We're less productive on Fridays, almost everywhere in the world. But deadlines don't ever take those things into account.
It's funny, on top of all of this, there's something that's widely known as the planning fallacy. And essentially, there's ample data that all but the most seasoned professionals are overly optimistic about how long it will take to complete tasks and underestimate the time needed to do so. If you have ever had a contractor come to your home, you have seen the planning fallacy in
Yes, you
play.
have.
You know,
Yeah,
it's
in live action.
anything that they say about how long it's going to take. And actually, I think the science technically says that it's like 30% that people underestimate by at least 30% every single time. I would, even with contractors, I'm going to go with 50%. So you should always double any guess in that area. In virtually every project, we're not good at planning work because the planning fallacy causes us to believe that things will get done more quickly.
Yep.
And I can tell you this, even if you say to yourself, you know what, I think it's going to take this long, but I'm going to add 15 or 20%. I think sometimes you still get political pushback from others. Like, no way it'll take that long, because not only are you suspect to the planning fallacy, but everyone around you is suspect to it too. So when you tell them, oh, it'll be 6 months, they say, it could be 4.
Right.
It's almost as if we're all in this together, making it harder on ourselves. If you've ever been briefed on a plan on high in your organization and thought, hey, the timeline is crazy.
No way. That's never going to happen.
It's not just because the business and our customers and competitors make it necessary. It's because the plan is too optimistic. And likely it's been through 2 or 3 meetings where somebody said, well, you know, it should take 25% more time. And somebody's like, that's ridiculous. You can do this right now. High D's, you know.
Yeah. I mean, the easiest example is our ability to plan our own work. I mean, okay, this has happened to everyone that's listening to this podcast right now. Your boss says to you, when can you have X done? And you spend a couple of minutes in your head and you look at the clock. I think close of business Friday. And then your boss responds by saying, oh, heck, I thought that would take at least 3 weeks. Okay, end of day Friday it is. And you now realize you're in the planning fallacy because you thought it would work. I mean, your gut said, I can get this done by close of business Friday. But your boss is like, are you sure? And now it's too late. I mean, you're committed.
Yeah.
But we have a tendency of over committing and underestimating how long it'll take, because we don't think of all of those things that might come up, all of those things that might distract us. We don't consider all of the other things that have to get done at the same time. And therefore, we have plans that don't work. Therefore, I think we firmly established at this point that deadlines are going to be missed, period. It's inevitable. It's baked into the plan. I mean, at the very onset, the moment we know the plan, we just know some things are going to get missed. What we managers then have to do is build trust so that our teams can remain committed and engaged as we work against those tough deadlines that have been set. And we also need to build systems around our work that'll help minimize the effect of those misses. Because again, they're going to happen. If we can make a plan, we can make a plan for what to do when the misses happen.
Yeah. Let's just all admit, let's make a pact. We admit deadlines are going to get missed.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest tools we have to address these misses is how we communicate about them. Today, really, the standard way of communicating about tasks, except to some degree in agile organizations, is to find out they're missed after they're missed. And that's just the norm, right?
Yeah,
It's just
yes, it is.
this is like, we're all pretending, we all have blinders on. Oh, like deadlines aren't going to get missed. It's going to be great. And also, I don't have to tell anyone that everything's at risk until it's already missed. You know, and I can tell you this from my experience. After one-on-ones, the single most effective thing that I can tell you helped me get things done, and especially in a remote environment, is deliverables.
Yeah, absolutely.
I stopped assigning tasks just over a year ago,
yeah.
and I switched everything to deliverables. And the great news is that during this year, I got a new direct. We hired someone new, and he has never had a task assigned to him from me. It's always been deliverable. So he doesn't think it's weird.
Right.
Probably he does think I'm weird, but that's cool. I don't mind being that weird.
I don't mind. In fact, another thing that I've noticed is if you do this often enough, assign deliverables versus tasks, if you, on the off chance, forget to assign a deliverable, your direct will say to you, by when do you need that?
Yes.
And they'll prod you to make it a deliverable because deliverables work better than tasks.
Also, because if your directs get used to it, then it's the way that they learn to prioritize their work. Because then they know, okay, this deadlines drive behavior. So if you give them something that has a deliverable, like it's a deliverable, not a task, and then the next thing comes up as a task, their brain immediately says, wait, which of these is higher priority?
Right. How do I prioritize that? Am I supposed to email it to you or drop it on your desk? In what format do you need it? There are questions in their brain. If we can just give it to them in a deliverable, their questions will be answered without them having to ask it. Because typically, work packages or projects are assigned as tasks for individuals to do. But it's the entire organization that delivers value. We all think of our work as our work, but it's really only on loan to us from the organization as a whole. The way the organization is even able to turn our tasks into something valuable is by us all communicating frequently, even incessantly, I would suggest, about our tasks.
Which is why they invented Slack.
Yeah, which is why there are so many communication mechanisms that have been afforded to us in this technological world of ours.
Yeah. This is also why CEOs, believe it or not, are routinely frustrated by not being able to truly know what the status of various work projects, packages, systems, or products are. Everyone assumes the folks at the top know, but they really don't. And you know why? Because they're not being communicated to.
Right?
They
don't know.
If you've ever spent all day working on something, I thought of this today. Yesterday, I worked on something for 3.5 hours. Only one other person knew that I'd done it. Now, I told my boss in my one-on-one today, so now he knows. However, prior to that, there was a whole, 20 hours where nobody knew that it had been done.
Yeah.
That's a gap. What if 3 people here what if our tech team had bandwidth to do the tasks associated with that and I didn't tell them?
Right.
Ouch. Listen to me not doing my jars.
Exactly. Everyone assumes the people at the top know it, all the work. They know everything that's been done. They really don't. And one core reason for it is that our individual tasks usually don't have that last piece, the communications of the status built into them. That is, having to create a database might be a typical task, or another might be conducting a quality test on an axle on a production line. In both cases, the task could be accomplished and yet never add any value to a product or service, because the person who would query the database or the team that would install the axle would never know it's ready to move to the next step. If the next person down the line doesn't know that they can do their part, the work being done on behalf of that individual, frankly, it's odd to say, is entirely irrelevant, because Again, we don't work in a vacuum. The people around us rely on the knowledge that they're able to do their part. And the only way they can do that is by us telling them.
Mm-hmm. That's where deliverables come in.
Exactly.
Modern work creation, that's where deliverables come in.
Yeah.
Modern work creation is moving from tasks to deliverables. Now the task of creating the database is changed into a deliverable, which is inform the SQL expert that the database is live and on such and such drive.
Mm-hmm.
For the Axle, the deliverable is to get the install team to sign off on the receipt of the Axle, noting that it met your quality check.
Exactly. In both of those cases, the deliverable cannot be achieved if the task is not complete. Therefore, that last step of communication is the final step of the task's completion. Now, if you want to improve your ability to meet deadlines and complete tasks in ways that don't delay the ultimate value creation, turn your tasks into deliverables by adding a communication component to them. Now, you're going to find our guidance about how to do that in detail in our Hall of Fame cast called Assign Work and Reporting. And if you're familiar with our coaching model relies heavily on deliverables versus tasks to ensure that all of those steps in the model, all of the tasks expected of your directs to deliver upon are communicated to you in a timely fashion.
If you're assigned tasks, turn them into deliverables. If you're creating new tasks, don't. Create deliverables instead.
Exactly.
We continue to have plenty of interest in our virtual effective manager conferences, the public ones. Our next public virtual effective manager conference kicks off on July 8th. It's 4 sessions. We do one-on-ones, feedback, coaching, and delegation. And in all of that, we cover rolling out the Trinity as well. And it starts on July 8th, and it's every Thursday in July. So the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th. Now, if you're going to miss one of those because you're going to be on vacation, or perhaps you've got something scheduled one particular day at work that just simply can't be moved, that's okay. If you missed one or even part of one, you can watch a recording of another one that will give you all the material. And of course, we're always here to exchange emails with you to help you through those rough spots in your training. So if you're a manager or you're about to be a manager, I encourage you to sign up for our 8 July cohort, we call them, of our virtual effective manager course. Thanks, folks.
All right. Oh, now it's important, though, that those deliverables, again, we talk about this a lot when we talk about the coaching model, is that the deliverables are no longer than 1 week. One of the work principles coming out of the field of project management in the last half century or so, if you've been paying attention, is that a project is in danger of being delayed by the length of the longest task in the project. Which means if a task, let's hope it's a deliverable, is a month long, the moment it goes red, that project is, by definition, 1 month in the red. It doesn't matter if there's only 1 day of work left out of the 30 to do. The project is a month delayed. Now that seems to some people as though it's counterintuitive, but what the science of shared work has shown us is that that's how it works.
Yeah, we've learned broadly that long tasks put work packages at greater risk. Agile has certainly shown us this, with Scrum team members routinely working on tasks that are due daily. Daily. And as we all know at some level, a task that takes a month really isn't a task. It's a whole series of smaller tasks. And breaking down longer tasks into smaller, less risky tasks is one way to improve our work timeliness. It's so funny to me that the way I always think of this about, daily tasks and stuff like this is I always think of like if you're painting. If you think about painting a room, that's going to take you a whole weekend because you have to wait for paint to dry, which, as we all know, is the worst. But there's 25 tasks involved in that.
Yes.
It's kind of, something that we lump them all together. If you want to get it done really quickly, though, you assign it by the hour, right? You assign the task by the hour. If you have something that is like longer than a week, you've gone too far. You've gone too far. And breaking down those longer tasks into smaller, less risky, and by that I mean shorter tasks, is a really strong way to improve our timeliness at work.
And a lot of that has to do with just the fact that as humans, we work in work weeks. Tasks that are longer than a week are inherently suspect.
Yeah.
While there are exceptions, there are a task that takes longer than a week to do is hiding a serious set of subtasks that can be called tasks. And those subtasks, the smaller tasks, come with them less risk, less complexity. They're smaller and easier to get done.
I think one of the ways to think about this is if you hear something like, oh, it's due on Tuesday. So let's say it's Monday and somebody says, oh, that's due on Tuesday. Okay, great. But then there's something that's due next week. You automatically know that the next week thing isn't going to get paid attention to until Friday. And maybe not even then, maybe Monday. It's essentially a way of saying this is not a priority right now when we assign something that's more than a week away.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say don't create tasks and make sure your deliverables are shorter than a week. Don't create tasks or deliverables that are longer than a week. Break them down into smaller things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It implies urgency.
Yeah, because shorter deliverables are better.
Mm-hmm. They are. Absolutely. And more achievable. And I don't know if you've heard this one before, but I've heard people procrastinate.
No.
I know I've never done it, but I've heard that some people do that. It might be a rumor.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about it already, but the agile world has shown us the value of chopping longer tasks into daily tasks.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the primary reasons it works better is more and smaller deliverables mean more responsibility about communication of status. So those smaller tasks drive forced communication. And that's what deliverables are doing as well. We're forcing communication. And a month-long project, let's say, with only 4-week-long tasks, only has 4 opportunities to evaluate A, status, and to communicate with the outside world as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe you've learned this lesson, so you've tried to enforce constant check-in by managers with those who are accomplishing the work. If instead you had a month-long project that had 20 daily tasks, you now have 20 opportunities to assess status. Yep. And it doesn't require someone to go down there and just, oh gosh, hey, how are we doing? Hey, how are we doing? Hey, how are we doing? But now we've got more opportunities to assess risk. And the burden of communication is less because the tasks are smaller and more frequent. It also means that you can move the work around. Because if we think about projects as, and we have a podcast about this, about a list of who does what by when, and you look at a month, if you only have 4 tasks in the month project, the assumption is, hey, these are all going to go to the same person. But if you got 20, suddenly we're spreading the wealth. And that may mean that things could get done more quickly, actually.
Right. Exactly. Which takes us then to the last piece of our guidance, and we saved the best for last. Owning a deliverable means owning the communications about it. If you own a task, or better yet, again, a deliverable, by definition, you own the responsibility to communicate about the status of the task to those involved in the work. I mean, let's be clear. Who else would it be? I mean, who else could it be? Surely we don't need someone else constantly coming down and asking us whether we're done or not. The person doing the work is the only person that would know. So they're the person responsible for communicating about it. In fact, I'd almost go a step further and say that not only is it inefficient for somebody to have to go down and ask you constantly where you are, it's also irritating. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there? Does anybody like that?
By not communicating proactively, you put yourself in that position.
Yeah. And then in my experience, then you're also annoyed at people for not get out of my face. I'm trying to get stuff done. Then actively communicate.
It's like, oh my gosh, all these dishes aren't done.
Yeah.
But I'm here by myself.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. If you don't want people up in your grill, constantly prodding you to find out when things will be done, more actively communicate.
What's funny is there's somebody who's thinking, well, what do you want me to do? The work or the communication?
Mhm.
And the answer, if you're an effective manager, is yes.
Mm-hmm.
You're responsible for both.
Yeah.
It's not going to magically tell people it's done. The fact that your organization didn't teach you that you're responsible for both the work and communicating that the work is done doesn't make this any less of a fundamental rule of modern organizations. Just because nobody said to you, hey,
exactly.
you need to tell people that your work's done. You know this. You experience this all the time when people come and ask you, when your manager asks you. The reason there are status boards is because we know this.
Yeah.
And status board is passive communication that will not get you to the activity you need.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fundamental rule of modern organizations.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I understand. Some people don't love this fundamental rule and they push back on it. But guys, communicating about the status of our work is one of the taxes we pay to achieve the magical magnification of human potential that large organizations make possible. Yes, it's true that the individual contributor might be more efficient if he or she only had to create databases or inspect truck axles. But the law of sub-optimization tells us that if we make every sub-part of an organization optimized, the whole organization becomes massively sub-optimized.
Which is what we're looking for.
Yeah. And on the plus side, we're all getting paid. So congratulations. Yeah. It's just more effective. It's more efficient. It's easier. It's better if the person who's doing the work communicates about it. So do that and teach your folks to do it.
Yeah. And if you know you're going to miss, or there's a chance you're going to miss, tell people. Communicate. Actively communicate. Because communication about our task or deliverable status is the price we pay for being part of a team. And the sooner we communicate about potential misses, the more efficient and effective we will be.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, Kate.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, everyone. That's all for this week. See you next week. Have a good one.